G'day and welcome to everybody. Again, I'm reviewing this on my YouTube channel. Done this early 2021, and since then I now have it also in N scale. For those of you who have been following my Kev's Workshop website, you'll notice since early 2022, or certainly over 3 months, I've actually been doing the N-scale L cars. Now with this, each of these carriages are 3D printed by my mate John, and they've come up beautiful. You can perhaps see some of the detail that's in these carriages. I've added a lot more detail than what's able to be seen. Yeah, there might be a wires in the way, I know. But the grab rails on the end of the carriage, plus the lamp irons, by comparison to the white metal bodied cars by Lloyd's Model Rail, you can sort of see some of the detail that's on the end. That's the HO scale version, of course. And I've linked all these together, and that's what I've done also in N scale. Now I'm using the Microtrains Civil War era bogies for the carriages. They're 4 scale feet long, not 6, which is what they should be. And basically it's all I had available to do the cars. As you can see amongst here, I've done a vestibule for between, which all the HO scale will end up with as well. So I've done 3 of these in N scale at this point in time, and I've only done 1 in the HO scale, which both sets will be completed eventually. With all these carriages, I've actually added in the truss rods, the queen posts, and all the underfloor detail on each of the carriages. So luckily I've had the HO scale set to work too. Gives me all the correct details, measurements, everything that I needed. So you can see there I've got the HO and N scale vestibules. Hopefully it's a bit easier for you to see. See here on the buffet car, it's on the HO scale set. That's the correct window alignment. When my mate John had a friend help him do the 3D drawing, he stuffed up, so I've had to panel in the door and the extra windows. So according to his friend's set of plans, that's how they were. But this is how I know them to be on the buffet car. So I've actually had a ride in these sort of carriages in my young days. So that's the RFL, which is a buffet car, and that's the RFL in N scale. So there's a few minor mistakes made when the 3D drawing was done, but apart from that, the carriages have come up quite nicely. Now I'm using Rayleigh paints, the Indian red, and I'm using automotive silver. So the silver paint comes from Super Cheap Autos here in Australia. So it's just ordinary stock silver, Australian export. Now what I'm doing for the set, I'm running a Rapido on this end of the set, and that swings independent of the bogie. You sort of see the end detail on this car, which is my leading car on the set. The only thing I've got to do is put in the red dots for the tail lights on both ends, and you get the decals for the N scale set. To show you an idea, there's the HO scale set by comparison. Set 85 was the second last of the sets. So set 80 to set 86. 86 was the Caves Express. 85 is one of the generic sets they ran. So that's why I've chosen set 85. So at least with this, folks, hopefully you'll like to, or hopefully you'll like what I've done so far, in both HO and in N. Each of these sets have taken ages to build. The HO scale set being white metal bodies with wooden roofs and floors. By comparison, These are white metal cast roof vents. They are the torpedo style roof vents. What I've done to achieve this sort of effect in N.S.W.G.R, I've used Pico N.S.W.G.R track pins and ground each one of them so they're in a similar torpedo shape. After marking and drilling, each one of those track pins are glued in as roof vents. As it's going around, you wouldn't know the difference perhaps, and just one by comparison, here on the RFL car, I'll just come up to the N.S.W.G.R version. You'll notice that one roof vent is slightly different. It's a flattener vent, which is like a whirly gig type of thing. And all I've done here is left one track pin as a standard Pico track pin, a bit of wire insulation around it to represent the flattener vent. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. Now today being near the end of September 2022, I shall be giving the N.S.W.G.R set a run around the layout, which this board you can see is just one section of. But I really wanted to show those of you who are interested in my modelling as to what I have achieved in both HO and NN. Now to give you an idea, this is the full size set going to New South Wales 36, and you can see here how beautiful these carriages were in real life. They only ever ran as a 6-car set to my knowledge, and I grew up in New South Wales as a little kid from the mid 60s onwards, so I remember seeing these in heritage use. I don't know if there's anything of these preserved at the moment. I know there are individual cars preserved in different places, but as a complete set I don't know if a complete set exists. My plan is to do a C36 in N.S.W.G.R again, and I will have a 36 eventually onto my N.S.W.G.R set. Just bear with me, I'll change camera positions. Okay, there's a different position. You see my C35 class at the bottom. That's what the loco originally looked like, the black version that is. I had toyed with the idea of doing a C36 using the Fleischmann loco. Problem is, tender driven. I can't lengthen the wheelbase on the tender to be more what the 36 needs to be. So that's why I opted for doing the C35. And yes, I've got a second set of L cars to do up as the Caves Express, set 86, and that'll run behind me 35. So you can sort of see the comparison here between both locomotives, and they are both N.S.W.G.R. Problem being tender drive. If the loco wheels tighten up, it looks wrong when it's skating along the track. So yes, I shall just change positions again, and although not quite sitting correctly, you can see the 35 on the front of the L cars, or Cub set as they were known. So my second set, which I'll get started on hopefully before the end of 2022, will be the blue and cream set. But this will give you some indication as to what it'll be like. Now those of you watching from interstate, overseas, whichever, if you don't know much about Australian railways, the C35 was originally the NN class before the renumbering scheme came in, so they were nicknamed nannies. So the C35, 460, Belpaire firebox, these are all rebuilt locomotives in full size. They had modifications done to them as they came on into the workshops and came out re-released in this variant, this formation. The C35s are commonly used on this sort of train, and the Caves Express went from Sydney on the east coast of Australia up through the Blue Mountains to the west to a place called Lithgow, and then they returned back to Sydney. So therefore there's a tail car at the leading end, HFL, and if you look at the tail end of the train, second HFL, another tail car. So that's the reason why They are like this because they are end-to-end trains. For those who are interested in knowing, the HFL in this case on both trains, Sydney end, and in this configuration you've got the HFL at the tail, followed by a BL. In the middle you've got the RFL, buffet car. Then you've got twin BL cars, and at the leading end another HFL. So if we look at the the HO set, this would be the Sydney end, or Sydney terminal end, and you're looking out west to the leading end of the train. So when this came back from Lithgow, that would be the tail end of the train at this end. Hope that doesn't bore you too much or confuse you too much. All I've got to really do with the N.S.W.G.R set is get the decals, if I can get a hold of them anywhere. I've got someone to contact, so if they will do them for me in N.S.W.G.R, I'll be wrapped. The people who produce the HO scale decals, which is Wessex Transfers, are the people I've got in mind. If they can do them into N.S.W.G.R, I'll be wrapped. Well, very soon I'm going to be setting up Wombat Flats, which is this module you can see is just one section of. The whole layout itself is around 24 feet long, if you want to go imperial scale, and about 8 feet wide. So, with the LED lighting up top, I'll just give you a bit of an idea of the cantilever system I'm using. Bit of aluminium tubing and aluminium angle, just basically slotted onto the backdrop, and that's how it's holding in place. Very simple setup, and the wiring just runs through the tube. I'll see if I can show it to you. This is LED strip lighting from J.K. Electronics here in Australia. And that's the end of the roll, of course. And from underneath, the wiring, it's a bit hard for you to see maybe, but inside that bit of tubing, which is up here, let's get my finger there in the right spot. It's hard to see the LED lighting in the way, but down that tubing is where the wire runs. So the wire runs from up the end, back, down here and out the back. The easiest way I can do it. Well, in a moment I shall get out some other bits and pieces to show you. Actually, before I go setting up the rest of the layout, I'll just change positions again. Just come back over to here. My belly table just got crap on it at the moment. Good crap at that. Made up a box for a loco I got some years ago. Pendennis Castle in N.S.W.G.R. Hornby job, of course. And if you're going to model in multiple scales, why not have it in N scale as well? So this one's the Graham Farish N scale job, the Hornby HO scale version, or 00 version. Now, the thing is, for those who don't understand or don't know, Pendennis Castle was sold from the Great Western Rail in the UK, came to Western Australia, lived here for a number of years, and eventually went back to the UK after being sold back. I'm led to believe that she's back into steam, but I've also got Flying Scotsman as well, so that'll run in tandem with that. New South Wales carriages behind it, and there's a WA tour. So if you're looking at modelling a bit of WA, not double O. If you're looking at modelling some WA gear and you want to do a tour, Flying Scotsman, Pendennis Castle and New South Wales 12-wheelers, you'd be able to get away with doing the Western Australian tour. Bear with me a minute.